You'll hear Sal before seeing him. Based in the US, he's the voice of action sports like the Summer and Winter X Games. He's a recording artist working on his third album and is as passionate about South Africa as he is about surfing.
I mean, you're no stranger to sports. You're an American commentator, sports commentator, and actually the voice of action sports. Where does the passion for surfing come from?
It's a crazy title when I hear people say that. But for me, you know, my parents moved to California when I was 16 years old. I'd never surfed before, but I moved to a town, a small beach town, much like Bolito in San Diego, where that's what the kids did. And so it was like, okay, I'm here, this is what they do. I might as well join them. And the first time that I rode a wave, I stood up for like 10 seconds. My life was changed. It was like a spiritual experience. I'd never felt that before, and I've been chasing it ever since.
Commentating and surfing his way from South Africa to Fiji and Indonesia, he still made time to give Harmony a surfing lesson.
Left leg up under your stomach and pop up.
Okay.
All right?
So we'll give it a try?
3, 2, 1. Nice. Again. Look forward, don't look at me.
Okay.
Okay, you're paddling. Okay, go. Boom. That's actually really, really, really good.
I feel like I'm in the army now, the surf army. All right, cool, let's do this.
Cool. I like your chances. I really like your chances.
I'm excited, man. I really want to do this.
Surfing is probably the most zen of the many sports Sal reports on. His commentary covers snowboarding, mountain biking, freestyle motocross, and downhill skating. So Harmony's tumbles were about the gentlest he's likely to see in a day's work. But it was worth it to watch his student stand, if only for a second.
Man, I could definitely do this forever.
Yeah, man, you, welcome to the Addicts Club.
Thanks so much for the lesson.
It's an honor, man. And honestly, like, if I had just slightly better equipment, a little bit bigger, since you're such a tall guy, you'd be ripping. But you have the athletic ability.
Yeah.
So stick with it.
Thanks, man. You had one of your first South African surfing experiences in 1991. What was the scene like back then, and how has it changed?
As a kid, in reading the surf magazines, I'd always seen how good the waves were in South Africa, so I was keen on getting to have the experience. But at the same time, you know, this is in the beginnings of the unraveling of apartheid, and the laws had just changed shortly before I got here. So unbeknownst to me, I was like the first black person to attempt to surf in Durban. The first few days were interesting. You know, I remember the first day that I walked out of the hotel, like, cars were stopping and people were just looking like, you know, what am I seeing? But after a while, people got used to it. It was a traumatic experience, you know. I was only 19 years of age. But to come back now, and I went and surfed that same spot in Durban with the kids from Surfers Not Street Children. You know, these are young kids who had really challenging lives and for whom surfing has changed their lives. You know, in that time since I came here the first time, you know, people have reached out to local kids, to indigenous South African kids, and said, here, this is yours too. You know, and it's actually changed kids' lives.
Inspiring these surfers echoes the work of Sal's organization, Stoked Mentoring, and the Ilembe Surf Riders. It helps teens from disadvantaged backgrounds to find self-belief through sport, as Hugh Masekela inspired young people with music.
What is it like being back?
I've been building a relationship with this country since I was 19 years old. You know, I wasn't able to come here while my father was in exile. I feel like with each trip, you know, I've been back here now probably, I don't know, 12, 13 times. I feel more and more like it's a trip home. It just feels so good to be amongst, you know, South Africans and just feel that energy and that spirit of the people. You know, when you walk down the street and you know, you see someone and you just go, and someone does that back to you, you know, and smiles like, hey, it's how are you? You know, that's a distinct energy. You know, the spirit of South Africa and its people is magic, man. So I'm happy to be home.
We had the honor of featuring your dad on our show alongside Jay Something from Mikasa as they spoke about their inspirational song, Heaven in You. What was it like having the legendary Hugh Masekela as a father?
My dad was my best friend, you know, and we always looked at each other as best friends. So we did things together that friends do. You know, we went to shows together. And one of the great things about my dad is that he was cool with everyone. He was cool with the person that was sweeping, you know, the place. And he treated that person the same as the person who owned the place, you know. It was one of his signatures, you know, he just loved people. My earliest memories with him is being in the club. You know, like 5, 6 years old, being in the club at 2 in the morning. Like, that's what I did when I'd go and hang out with my dad for the weekends. Like, most people's parents took them to the park or went to a game. Like, we were in the club. He got on the stage, you know, and it was his main goal to turn you not just into a fan of the music, but he wanted you to go home curious and hungry to want to learn more about South Africa and more about the continent. To have all those examples and to have that at a very young age, it was incredible, you know, and I think it really served and helped me in the man that I've become.
Being a roadie for the Graceland tour must have actually paid off because you inherited the musical skills of your father and even went on to form your own band, Alakazam.
My dad took me out of high school on the road with Paul Simon on the Graceland tour for 3 months. That was my studies that year. I did not learn anything in school that year, but what I learned on the road with him and that tour served me for the rest of my life. And I'm with Hugh Masekela and Ladysmith Black Mambazo and Paul Simon and my dad, you know, and I'm watching the greatest musicians all the time. So I was always bathing in music. You know, I was lucky in that, like, once my career took off and I was established, when it came time for me to make an album, it wasn't like making a record was going to make or break me. I could just make it, and if people liked it, cool. If not, cool. And my cousin and I were talking. He was engineering, and he's like, "Hey, what do you want to call this album?" At some point, I just said, "Alakazam." And he goes, "Yeah, man, Alakazam." Like, it took me back to that day with my dad had it as a license plate when I was a little kid, and I asked him what it said on the license plate, and he said, "Look at it closely. It's your name backwards. Don't you ever forget it." I was like, "Oh, that's us. We're Alakazam." And then all these years later, it gave me an opportunity to make the music, put this little, like, name on it. If you were smart enough to read into it and learn that it was me, cool. But the music got to be the music. People could listen to that first, and then if they wanted to learn more about who it was, then they could find out that it was me.
Out of all the many lessons he taught you, what was the one that stood out for you?
You know, the greatest gift that my father gave me, like, as far as instruction, lesson-wise, was whatever that you're gonna do it with 100% your whole self. Drink it in, breathe it, learn it inside out, and then apply yourself to it and go. The thing that he taught me was that there's only you. What you have to give, no one else has.
Well, Sal, I've had such a blast. Thank you so much for teaching me how to surf and inaugurating me into your amazing surfing club.
But thank you so much, man. Really.
Appreciate it.
You're really talented, and this has been really fun hanging out with you.
Thank you.
Right on.
Appreciate it.